Hi folks, welcome to Plan to Protect with Melodie Bissell, the safest podcast on the internet. My name is Joshua Bissell, and I'm the producer of this weekly podcast, where we tackle topics of abuse prevention and vulnerable sector protection. We're so thankful that you've chosen to spend your time working towards the protection of the vulnerable and safeguarding those who are in our care. We trust that this time will be beneficial to you. Thank you again for joining us for Plan to Protect with Melodie Bissell, the safest podcast on the internet. Here's Melodie.
Can you even imagine turning on the evening news at 6 o'clock and hearing about a 10-year-old girl being bullied on the school bus, and there is a video of the bullying attack and it was your daughter that was being bullied? Can you even imagine, as a mama bear, how you would feel if this was the first time that you learned that your daughter was being bullied? That is what happened when a mother turned on the 6 o'clock news and she saw video footage of her daughter being bullied on the school bus coming home from school. She never received a phone call from the school. She never received a phone call from the bus company. Her daughter never disclosed to her that she had been bullied on the school bus. But there her mother saw the horrendous attack. Can you imagine how you would feel? How would you feel if you learned about your son, who was 12 years old, who was on the spectrum, who had been bullied by a group of boys in the playground at school? Can you imagine what anger and frustration you would have felt? Bullying happens every day. It happens in the playground. It happens on the internet. It happens on telephones. It happens at church, at camp, in sporting leagues. Bullying happens every day, and it happens among boys, it happens among girls, it happens of people from all age groups. Today in our podcast, we are going to be speaking about the prevalence of bullying and how organizations should respond to bullying, and how parents can respond if they hear that their son or daughter has been accused of bullying, or if they have been the victim of bullying. Before we begin, and before I disclose and share with you some definitions and some tips on how to prevent bullying from happening, I want to give you some statistics. The statistics I'm going to share with you come from the Canadian Institute of Health Research. Most of the statistics are from Canadian sources, but when I research this topic on bullying, we find that the statistics in Canada mirror that of the United States, but just greater so as far as population goes. Canada has the 9th highest rating of bullying in the 13-year-old age group category on a scale of 35 countries. They come in just a little bit higher than United States. At least 1 in 3 adolescent students in Canada have reported at some point being bullied recently. Among Canadian adults, 38% of males and 30% of females reported having experienced occasional or frequent bullying at some point in their lifetime. 47% of Canadian parents report that their son or daughter has been a victim of bullying. Any participation in bullying increases the risk of suicide ideas in young people. The rate of discrimination experienced among students that have identified themselves as lesbian, gay, bisexual, trans-identified, two-spirited, queer, or questioning LGBTQ+, is 3 times greater than heterosexual young people. Girls are more likely to be bullied online than boys are. Boys tend to be bullied more in the playground than girls do, and their bullying is more physical. 7% of adult internet users in Canada, ages 18 years of age and older, self-reported having been a victim of cyberbullying at some point in their life. The most common form of cyberbullying involved threatening or aggressive emails or instant messages reported by 73% of the victims of cyberbullying. 40% of Canadian workers have experienced bullying in the workplace. Even in the faith sector, people report that they have been bullied by church leaders and ministers. Let me share with you a few definitions of bullying. So let me begin by giving a definition of bullying. I'm going to read it to you. And this comes from numerous sources, but I'm going to give you a few definitions as we work through this topic of bullying. Bullying is characterized by acts of intentional harm repeated over time in a relationship where there is an imbalance of power that exists. It includes physical actions, punching, kicking, biting. It's verbal actions, which is threats, name calling, insults, racial or sexual comments, and social bullying, exclusion, or online bullying, cyberbullying, which is spreading rumors, ignoring, gossiping, or excluding individuals. Boys tend to be more likely to bully and to be bullied, usually in the form of physical violence and attacks and exhibition of aggressive behavior. Alternatively, it is girls that appear to be more prone to indirect bullying in the form of social isolation, exclusion, slandering, gossiping, and spreading rumors. Another definition of bullying is defined as unwanted, aggressive behavior that involves a real or perceived power imbalance and repeated and is potential to be repeated. There's many different types of bullying: verbal bullying, social bullying, physical bullying, cyberbullying, racial bullying, homophobic bullying, sexual harassment bullying, religious bullying. Those are all forms and types of bullying. I can remember as a student having girls kick me, push me down, punch me, and grab a hunk of hair. And I can remember looking at the hair in a girl's hand that she had pulled out of my hair as she was bullying me. We really encourage, whether you're a school, a church, a camp, a daycare, a youth drop-in center, that you have policy in place around bullying. The policy should clearly state that no form of bullying will be tolerated. So zero tolerance. That zero tolerance does not mean that bullying won't happen, but zero tolerance means that you will not tolerate bullying from happening. You will not ignore it. You will address it, and you will do everything that is reasonable that you can do to prevent bullying from happening. Let me give you an example of a policy that we would recommend that you consider around the topic of bullying. Our children, our youth, and our vulnerable adults have a right to a caring, respectful, and safe environment. An anti-bullying policy will therefore be in effect at all times and will be clearly communicated and enforced among participants, volunteers, and staff members and parents. All program personnel will take action to prevent bullying from happening. They will teach against it. They will role model caring behavior. They will assist and support children, youth, and vulnerable adults who are being bullied. Bullying in any form will not be tolerated. That would be an example of a policy statement. Then you would have procedures on how you will respond when bullying takes place. A procedure for dealing with bullying would include any incident of bullying must be documented on an incident report form. It should be acknowledged, it should be documented, it should be reviewed and dealt with appropriately and immediately. All incident reports or suspicions of bullying should be reported to both the program lead and leadership. Appropriate action will take place based on the situation. Possible action may include, but is not limited to complete an incident report form immediately and turn that into leadership, to notify both sets of parents. Parents should not learn about their son or daughter being bullied on the 6 o'clock news. They should be immediately notified of the incident. They should provide a warning that bullying will not be tolerated. Suspension, if it's a first-time occurrence, maybe a 1-day suspension, and it should again happen immediately after the issue happened. Bullying that is repeated should include a 3-day suspension. If the individual is not learning from the incident and they continue to bully, they should be expelled and removed from the school. They should prohibit the children and young people from participating in some of the activities like field trips, school trips, special fairs, and events. If necessary, you should consult the police if the individual continues to bully, depending on the age of criminal activity in your state, province, and territory. The one thing I would really warn you against is bringing all the parties together and saying, okay, let's reconcile, let's shake and let's make up and say we're sorry and try to get on. As much as we may want to do that, and we've been doing it with our toddlers and our young children as early as JK and SK, when it comes to bullying, there is an imbalance of power. Listen to the stories of those that participated, those that are victims, and any observers. Don't only listen to the words and the stories. Watch the behavior. Watch the reactions of the students. So often, victims of bullying, they don't want to make it worse. They're so fearful that if they tell the story of what happened, it will get worse. Protect the victim. Provide a safe location for them to tell their story. Let their story be anonymous, but make sure you listen to the other observers. Just because there are 3 boys or girls that are telling you a very different story from what the victim is telling you does not mean the incident did not take place. It's so important to separate all the parties and hear the story of what transpired. We really warn you against attempts of reconciliation. You do want to encourage a change of behavior among the bullies. You want to challenge their behavior. You want to role model positive behavior with those students. But it's so important that you bring in your guidance counselors or professional counselors who will be able to counsel individuals that are both the bullies and the victims. You want to nip this in the bud immediately and immediately try to be able to see change of behavior and get help for the victim. In an article called What Can Parents Do About Bullying by Divecha, November 6th, in Greater Good, a Berkeley education article. And I'll ask Josh, who's our production officer here at Plan to Protect, to put it in the show notes below on YouTube, a link to the article. Diana gives great tips on this whole topic of bullying, whether it is your son or daughter who is the bully, or if it's your son or daughter who is the victim. There's a real difference between being an authoritative parent and being an aggressive, harsh parent. As a parent, you should take authority. You should speak on behalf of your children if they are the victims. You also need to make sure that you clearly communicate to your son or daughter who's being the bully that this behavior will not be tolerated. You are the parent. You've been entrusted with the care of your children, though you do want to get down to the real truth of what transpired. Don't protect your children to the place that you are oblivious to the fact that they have become a bully or they've teamed up with a bully within their friend group. You want to nurture a positive family climate. When I train on physical abuse and I talk about indicators of abuse, I will often say bullies beget bullies. If you are a harsh parent and you don't have a family home that is nurturing and caring, but you use aggressive, assertive, harsh language with your children, or you are physical with your children, and you are exerting your power, there's certainly an imbalance of power within the home setting among parents and children. But if your children are seeing you bully them, then that will encourage them to bully others. Bullies beget bullies. Everyone in a family needs a sense of power. But is that need supported in developmentally appropriate ways? Do family members express a healthy agency through rational, age-appropriate negotiations and communications and problem solving? Our preschoolers provided a limited set of choices, helping teenagers think through consequences, natural consequences for the behavior is a healthy way of learning for future growth. Researchers have increasingly realized that siblings exert enormous influence over one another. Children who are involved in sibling bullying will find that children who have been bullied within the home will bully outside the home. You want to teach emotional health and wellness. You want to teach good interpersonal skills. Research suggests that children that grow up in an emotional, rich language environment where parents talk about their feelings and how they are responding to their feelings are so much better managed than if feelings are suppressed to the point of eruption through anger and violence. Within the home, you want to encourage a learning environment, learning about relationships, learning how to deal with individuals that you don't get along with. There's always going to be some people that your children know that you have trouble with and problems with. Please talk through those situations in a healthy, positive way. Don't let your children hear you threaten an individual or use violence in the home because it will be learned behavior. Encourage supportive friendships, constructive peer groups, healthy peer groups. Make sure that you are getting to know the friends of your children. Open up your home to their friends. Invite them over for a meal. Watch how they interact. Listen to how they talk about others at school and those that may be less fortunate than themselves. That will be a huge sign of how they interact outside of the home, on the playground, or in a social media setting. Make sure that you know your children's passwords and that you are monitoring their interaction with others on the internet and on their phones. When your children face small difficulties, help them cultivate a mindset of resilience. Children are very resilient, but when they are being bullied, they are being pounded down, they're being kicked at, they're being belittled, they lose their self-esteem. Self-esteem is so important when it comes to children who are being bullied. That's why, unfortunately, we see so many children that have been bullied who want to commit suicide. Their peers are telling them to hurt themselves or to commit suicide, or that they should be dead, not alive, that they're trash. It's so important to be building up the self-esteem of your children. Help them to determine truth versus lies. There will be time that your children will need to borrow your confidence in confronting a situation. Encourage your children to speak up for truth, to not watch and be a sideliner when someone is being bullied, but to speak up for justice and compassion, love and care. Finally, I want to encourage you as parents to cultivate good, healthy relationships with school administration and with leadership of programs that your children are in. You don't want your first conversation with the new principal to be in their face, asking them, what are you going to do about my son or daughter that's being bullied? Build a relationship of trust and respect so that if you do need to confront leadership, they will take what you have to say at face value and they will explore what is actually happening and investigate what is happening. Don't try to take on the bully yourself. If you need to, go up the ladder. Speak to the teacher. The teacher is not taking it seriously. Speak to school administration, the vice principal, the school trustees, the board. If you still continue to feel that you are not being listened to, speak to the parents of the children that are bullies. Contact the police. Protect your children. Support those in leadership. If they are accusing your children of being bullied, get help for your children. Get help for your children early so they don't end up one day in prison. Zero tolerance for bullying means that we will take every incident of bullying seriously. In a later edition of our podcast, we'll talk about harassment, which is just in many cases, a grown-up form of bullying. Join us next week as we talk about being a whistleblower. Thanks so much for joining us today. Take care. Bye.